Hey everyone, Koopaman here. I've been thinking a lot lately, something I do when I walk from location to location, or I guess sit around the starship now that I'm stuck with Gonzalez, and I might as well stop and share something, a thought I've been having, and that's this. History is almost always defined by men who did or said the right thing, even when all others thought otherwise. Well, what do I mean by that? Let me explain first with a logical fallacy called argumentum ad populum, or as some people call it, the bandwagoner's fallacy. What this is the fallacy in which you assume something must be true because the majority of people believe it to be. Or, to put it in the words of Tommy Lee Jones,
a person is smart, people are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat, and 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet.
Well, what exactly has brought this on then? Well, recently there's been a kerfuffle between two right-wing media groups, the Daily Wire and Louder with Crowder, and not to get too biased one way or the other, Crowder's in the right. The issue stems from a contract given by the Daily Wire to Crowder in which, to give a layman's version of what was said, gave the Daily Wire all the benefits and unfairly punished Crowder if he went out of their line. This includes being wrongly suspended on YouTube, which occurs to him a lot. I mean, the man has Target painted on his back. That's usually done for him saying things that no one else has the testicular fortitude to even say. Furthermore, it will have only allowed him a yearly budget, not a salary, a bit under what his show costs to produce. And that budget, again, not a salary, can be penalized if he does anything that the company doesn't like, such as getting wrongfully banned, not doing enough ad reads per episode, or just not doing enough episodes per year. And the ad reads one is particularly egregious because that's not the kind of show he runs. If he were to read off ad breaks every 5 minutes for catheters and gold, then his audience would basically reject the show outright. For a more in-depth breakdown of the contract in question, here's a video by Shadiversity, links in the description. Now let me state this outright out of the gate. Steven did not fire the first shot. When he released a video addressing the unfairness of contracts, he did not once name the Daily Wire. In fact, on his last show, since he announced that he was breaking off with his former company manager, The Blaze, one would have expected the video was about them. It wasn't until Jeremy, one of the managers at the Daily Wire, released a video confirming that he was talking about them and proceeded to assassinate Steven's character, painting him as both spiteful and greedy and incapable of understanding business, during which time the contract proposal was made public. However, this backfired a bit because now people could actually read the damn thing and see that Steven was right, and it would get picked apart by several YouTubers, including Shadiversity, whose video I just showed you, and as you can see, he had a lot to say. Yeesh, I don't think I ever seen a Mormon made that angry, and you know if you've made a Mormon angry, you've done goofed. Mormons very, very rarely get angry. Also not helping the Daily Wire is the fact that Crowder was able to reply as he was not under contract with them. He wasn't obligated to cover up the shadiness and toe the company line, and revealed on the phone that Jeremy had called Crowder and his employees wage slaves, showing that the Daily Wire was in private completely different to what they are in public. Character is what you are when no one is looking. He then, quite explicitly, explained it wasn't about the money, rather the principles that the contract would effectively make him beholden to big tech. You see, having principles is what doing the right thing means, and unfortunately, those without principles believe all others are just as morally bankrupt. The lies would continue, but instead of the, "he just wants more money, bruh," narrative, they changed tactics to the, "you recorded a friend, bruh." A company mandate then went out, and those employed by the Daily Wire, such as Dr. Jordan Peterson, who even showed the remote support for Crowder, had to withdraw that support or lose their job. Furthermore, they would have Candace Owens, famous for once creating a doxing website, go on Timcast and throw a hissy fit to the level of when she would debate Blair White and threw a similar hissy fit, insulting her face as soon as the debate started. Thanks to Rucka Rucka Ali for the abridged version.
Ali. Hey, hey. Guys.
Epic fat battles of Fisherman!
Guys.
Red, white versus red, bro! Fight!
This ain't a cat fight, bitch. You a grown man, bitch.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Make me a sandwich.
I ain't done yet, bitch. Let me finish.
Let me finish.
Let sight.
What? I'ma fuck you up the head with the flashlight.
Tell your crew I don't negotiate with terrorists. I'm the hardest conservative from Connecticut.
Why did you invite me here to debate me? Can't find a black bitch that shook as you in Haiti.
Great, but you can find your own bullshit on me. Try finding a bitch sneaking into your party.
Guys don't wanna be here with you too, reminding me why I started banging dudes. This bitch so crazy.
This girl is a guy.
Guys, is the world strange enough? 2017, you couldn't make this up. Tell us who paid you.
This is a low light.
Guys.
The more things changed, the more they stayed basically the same, because her attacking Steven Crowder's character incessantly and childishly basically proved that she's the reason that Kanye West ran away from the MAGA movement into the arms of Nick Fuentes and neo-Nazis. Seriously, there are even those in my own friend group who believe that she's done more harm to the Daily Wire than good. So, of course, Ben Shapiro himself would dedicate his next scheduled episode to further assassinate Crowder's character, painting him to be a bad friend as he insulted him for not liking being called a wage slave, and accused him of being greedy as he read ad breaks into the middle of his rant for companies he never personally worked with, aside from the ad reads that they offered him tons of money for. You heard me. He read ad breaks in the middle of his own rant, and Crowder's supposed to be the greedy one. Which brings us to Crowder's recent appearance on Timcast, where he reaffirmed everything he said before. And now there are still a few that hold firm that Tim is just a spineless loser for not asking the, quote, hard questions to Crowder, as they'd probably not want him doing for Ben or Candace, and it really isn't what his show is about. Granted, not a week and a half later, Tim would prove that he is a spineless loser, but not in regards to Crowder, but Eliza Blue, but that's a whole different controversy. Anyway, those who had that take did so because they lacked principles, therefore assume that Steven also was incapable of having them, because anything to the contrary would mean they're not normal and they're the bad people. And that brings us to the character of this kind of person. The mustache-twirling arch-capitalist who will gladly lick the boot of whoever has more money and power they do, while sneering down their nose at those who work directly for them, or who are beneath them socially and fiscally. This is basically a propagandistic version of what the left actually believes the right wing to be brought to life. But I am sad to say that that was the reality for the right wing very much into the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. It's exactly how we got John McCain, the Bush family, Mitch McConnell, and others of that stripe into power at the time, and how they held on to that power ever since for over 20 years. Not much differentiates these types from the left, aside from the fact that we are supposed to hate them for being, quote, right-wing, when really they actually aren't. If it was up to them, big business and big banks would have the exact same power and authority over people's lives, regardless of agenda, that the big state does, even if the big businesses and big banks have the exact same politics as the big state. It's basically the politics of a second Gilded Age, only instead of Standard Oil, it's Goldman Sachs. Ben, Candace, and those in the neoconservative movement do not and cannot understand that there are things deeper than how much money you have, who has the most money and power, who to suck up to, and who to look down upon. This is why Ben himself was a never-Trumper in 2016, because of how Donald Trump presented himself and what he represented that Ben could either not see or saw as an existential threat to his status. And that is also why he cannot understand why it's not okay to unfairly treat your contracted employees and license partners. The money does not matter. It was the principles of being beholden to big tech. The phone recording does not matter, as the contents of the call expose what the Daily Wire truly thinks of Crowder and its employees. Friendship does not matter because you don't screw over a friend with a contract. And more than that, you don't call them wage slaves to their face and tell them that they owe you. That's just being abusive. What matters is saying what's right and doing what's right. And what's right is exposing injustice no matter who's perpetuating it, be it a fellow, quote, right-winger, or a friend, or whoever. The Daily Wire sent an abusive contract, are treating its employees and their families as pawns in their campaign, and show no remorse in doing so. They're not upset at Crowder for, quote, being a bad friend. They're mad at him for the fact that they got caught. Remember, Crowder didn't name them. But he was willing to fight them and all others who do these kind of greedy, self-interested deals and contracts, no matter who it was, because you don't do that to your fellow human being, especially if you're claiming to be their ally. You may not agree with how he did it, or be emotionally manipulated into thinking that Ben or Candace or whoever saw him as a friend and not just another mark to take advantage of, but he was within his rights to do what he did, and it was the right thing to do. It isn't just this example that's proof of the majority of voices, which the Daily Wire certainly has, being a larger network, does not make one right. There are certainly examples from history, such as the case of Wyatt Earp being the only man willing to stand up to the Coeus County Cowboys, Winston Churchill being the only man in the UK willing to stand up to Adolf Hitler, or Teddy Roosevelt being willing to stand up to Standard Oil and the railroad barons. Not to compare a comedian who makes dick jokes to heroes from history, but the principle still applies, and they had the same amount of gumption. To wrap this up, I sincerely hope the best for Steven Crowder and his crew. They do a fantastic job to deliver content to their subscribers on the regular. I sincerely hope the Daily Wire actually takes a moment for introspective and maybe realizes that they're the assholes, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, regardless if you agree with me or not. After all, it's better to focus on customer satisfaction rather than how much money you can squeeze out of others. Anyway, it has been the Koopa Man. Game on.
So did you really just make a video about a week's-old controversy that everyone stopped caring about? I mean, everyone's already moved on to the Elijah Blue thing since then. I mean, heck, bandwagoner's fallacy doesn't even apply anymore. The majority are siding with Crowder now.
Shut up and drive, Gonzalez.
Whatever floats your skiff, Chief.